trust this guy with the stopwatch, so I start my own one here. Well, it's not working, so I trust him anyway. So, Matt,
I don't trust him.
be fair. Okay, today, this is part of the accessibility track or sessions, but I'm going to take a little bit of broader approach, talk about best practices in basically scanning, all right, converting paper to digital documents, and I of course also touch upon the accessibility, but there's more about that, what we can do. And as scanning normally involves many documents, so there's these two typical scan scenarios. There's desktop scanning. I'm not talking about that too much today, but as scanning normally is either early scanning, which means something like a digital mailroom solution or something like that, so the daily paper mail coming in, immediately scanned, electronic files are then processed in the organization. Early scanning or late scanning means that a lot of things was done on paper, maybe even paper-based workflows still, or legacy documents that are now going to be scanned, maybe for data mining purposes, big data approaches, or whatever reason there might be to scan old documents. In any case, many documents involved, and therefore I'm also going to take a look a little bit at the possible automation part in terms of the accessibility, where we heard a lot of impossibles today, but I have a couple of ideas around that. Okay. Let's get started. So, what happened in scanning? What happens when? What are the existing solutions for scanning paper to electronic format? Let's say. I'm not even saying documents, because still today, many people scan their documents to TIFF files. And talking about accessibility, that's it, right? This is an image format. When it comes to color, it's sometimes scanned into JPEGs, randomly sometimes used PNG, BMP, or other raster graphics format, but all of them have the same common denominator. Is that an English word? Yeah. Good, thank you. They're all just pixels, and they all have nothing that really has to do with documents. So the disadvantages are all there in a row, right? When you do scanning to color, you can't use TIFF, at least the black and white TIFF group 4. When you do scanning in black and white, it doesn't really fit into a JPEG. So only for scanned documents, you have many formats. Then an archive normally also has electronically born digital documents in that original Word, maybe also a couple of other ones. So you have a whole zoo of formats and already multiple formats only for your scanned documents. That's a big disadvantage. If you scan to TIFF group 4, which is, I don't know what, but it used to be a workaround. So, and if people are still doing it, there's just no excuse for doing it anymore. It used to be a workaround as color images were too big for computers to process and whatnot. Come on, that's over with. So stop scanning to black and white TIFF, because you definitely lose information. The image quality, I don't need to talk about that too much. I guess everybody knows that. If you scan a document with real text on that and probably a couple other components, compress it to a decent size color scan in JPEG, it's still kind of a big file. Or if you make it a small file, it's still kind of a really bad file and looks no longer that good. So there's a lot of disadvantages. Talking about metadata, yeah, there is options for putting some metadata into TIFF files, but not in JPEG. So that's why people ended up to put JPEG in TIFF files to also have a multi-page format for scanned documents. Oh man, that's all totally outdated. We can do much better. And as I said, the last line says it, 0% accessible documents. So that's no longer acceptable. What is acceptable is PDF. We heard a lot about that today already, but I'm going to focus a little bit more about the aspects of scanning to PDF today. So first thing, there's many ISO standards out there. PDF is based on many ISO standards. The big standard that has everything included, ISO 32000, PDF 2.0, all keywords we heard already today. But there's also for scan to PDF, there's also other ISO standard that's applicable. We heard a little bit maybe here and there about PDF-A, where the A potentially stands for archiving. That's an ISO standard. That's a subgroup of PDF that says How can I create my PDF file in a way that it doesn't have any features in there that are not that suitable for archiving? So for example, dynamic content that could be changed when the date changes on the computer and all of a sudden the document is totally different than what you store today. That's obviously not something that you would put in an archive. Only a little example what PDF-A can do for you. PDF-UA, we heard about that all day long, so I'm not going to explain it again. And for the scanned documents, again, this is a PDF is a format that fits all. So it fits the converted from Born Digital into PDF, PDF-A, PDF-UA, and by the way, these two go along well, by the way, as well. It also holds your, we don't do that anymore, but scan to black and white documents, and it holds your scan to color documents. So one format fits all. That's much better to begin with. It has advanced compression. I'm going to talk about that a little. It allows for searchability. I'm going to talk about that a little more. And I put it 508 compliance, but we all know about PDF-UA at the later part of today's presentations here. And that's also a big advantage why PDF is the better way. And come on, it's a multi-page format, which TIFF is not, or JPEG, let's say, is not. Okay, so I'm going to dive into these advantages now step by step. So as I said, we don't do this anymore, but in PDF, you also get advantages that are beyond accessibility when it comes to simple things like file size. PDF, since PDF 1.4, maybe, has JBIG2 as a compression engine built in. Don't want to dive too deep into what it all is, but it allows for complete mathematical lossless compression, so pixel identical, let's say, images, and that are still way smaller. So even TIFF Group 4 has been a very small file. I said it's a workaround for computers that don't have the horsepower to handle anything else, but that's not the end of story. So JBIG2, thus PDF, can, for black and white documents, provide lossless compression with no difference in the view, in the pixels at all. File sizes are down there. You can compare it if your scan page, this is an excerpt, just a couple characters from a larger page so that you can see the quality. And yeah, you don't see a difference, but that's by design. So when you have Fax Group 4, probably end up 60K. Rule of thumb is a lossless, pixel identical JBIG2, in, which is, by the way, what we strongly suggest to use, is like 2/3 of that. So you still can save potentially several gigabytes or petabytes or however big your archive is by just doing so. And you've already thought that TIFF Group 4 is small. Only touch this a little bit. So if you go black and white, or if you have a legacy scanned black, that's the only excuse. You have scanned your documents to black and white TIFF, and now you can still convert them to PDF, make them searchable, and make them smaller or reduce your overall archive size. In color, documents in color, they have their specific little things that makes it real difficult. So a document like that, marketing, collateral, whatever, typically consists of characters, letters, written text that is sometimes black and white. In this case, it's color. And then there's images on that. That might be a company logo. If it's an old archive, it might be the yellow thing in the background. So when a real H document, how it looks like. That's more like static, photorealistic parts of that. And the existing compression schemas out there in the market, there's just not a single compression schema that allows to make this document small and keep the text in the perfect shape still. And inside PDF, you can use, we call it, in layman's terms, we call it layering. You can use those layers, as we say, here to segment this image into sorted content that then can be addressed layer by layer with the best applicable compression schema, and we heard that before. That might be JPEG, might be JPEG 2000, it's all available in PDF, or it might even be the good old TIFF Group 4 or JBIG2 or whatever it is. But the layers are sorted. Other than the big example where JPEG would fail on the text part or make it really big, or TIFF group 4 would totally fail on the image part here. We do a segmentation, or we can do a segmentation into those layers and sort it out. The background image is just image part of it, and just an image can be perfectly compressed with JPEG or JPEG 2000. The middle layer is just the black and white text extract from that, and you can see on the other side that the text is colored. So, and then we have a foreground layer that just contains the colors of what the text had before. And those three layers are rendered automatically in every PDF reader. It's a standard feature, it's nothing special. They are layered on top of each other and then represent completely, perfectly the documents as we have it on the side there, while the layers individually can be compressed tremendously because they are so sorted, so specialized for a compression schema with a standard compression schema. And again, it's all in PDF since many, many versions, and it's all in PDF applications, viewers, readers, and so on. So you can just use it, and you can use it in PDF, in PDF-A, and other formats. So the result of that is obviously, again, the file size and the quality. So I said there's no excuse to go scan black and white again, because today, or since some years, this is a mature technology. Since some years in PDF, you can scan to PDF while you have the full color information in there on the very, right side. 55 kilobytes in this example. It's full color, it has perfect quality, and it's not bigger, even smaller, to be honest, than the TIFF group 4 representation of the same document. Just by the trick, let's say, to sort it out in layers, and every layer is compressed with the biggest efficiency these algorithms can give. So there's no excuse to not go color scanning today and put that in PDF. And now I'm talking about a couple of best practices. The next topic we obviously need to touch is accessibility. So this is something I don't need to repeat. You guys all have to do it, and we talked about today that it is potentially not possible to automate, but again, I promised and I will now show you what can be done in an automated fashion, because again, scanning normally involves a huge amount of document, and I think it's just unrealistic when you go back and scan the legacy archive of 1 billion pages that you go in there and do it all by hand. This slide is probably in the context of the whole day a little bit too much, but couple of excerpts from that. Accessibility is all about, it starts with, it's part of that is tagging. So you need to understand the structure of the document. You need to understand that there is, in a PDF file, normally you have all these objects in there, and the objects are rendered on a page. And the rendering of the object on the page it doesn't make any difference whether the object down there in the right part of the document is rendered first for printing, for viewing, or the object on the upper part is rendered first. So this is how PDF is constructed. But when we are in the accessibility field, we need to understand another layer of structure, and that is how the content is organized. And in a PDF file, that's a whole different story than how the content, the objects that it is built from on a single page is stored in a PDF file. So this overlay basically is called a tagging structure that gives the content another meaning or another sorting order. So it's not organized just to render, but it's organized to be consumed in the precise order on how things are intended to be used on a page. Okay, so the big thing to do is to add a reading or consuming structure. And remember, we are in the scan to PDF track here, and a scan, first and foremost, has no structure, zero structure. It's just pixels. Even if you put a scan in PDF, at the first stage, it's still just an image, and there's no structure. So we need first this extra logical layer of tagging, give it a meaning, an appearance, but then there's this extra, how do I get from the simple image to a text structure, and that potentially in a mostly automated fashion. And the thing that is in the middle is obviously an OCR when it comes to scan, and then interpreting, is that English? Interpreting the OCR results in a way that from there, with an engine that understands how layout is built and so on, a layout recognition engine, build a structure around that can be put in tags and re-engineer in a way the author's intent on what the reading order on a page would have been. For example, on that side there, you don't need to read that. It's not intended to be read out, but on that side there you see a classical example of a text in 3 columns. It's scanned in, and then you have an image, then it's OCR'd, and you have a searchable image, but still every reader will potentially read out the first line of all 3 columns first, and then the second line of all 3 columns because the extra layer of the tagging is missing and has to be derived first. So, no structure available. We need to re-engineer the author's intent. It will be never as accurate as if we would have done it in the first place, for sure. But thinking about a legacy archive, it's just done. It's past, right? So there's just no way to make the process better or something like that, or start at the root of the problem or something like that, because it's done. It's on paper, and we redigitize that now, and so we have to find other ways of, again, re-engineering the author's intent. In a newspaper structure like here, we have a couple of things that we can take. Obviously, we can try to understand the columns and where the articles end and where the next article starts, and not read, even if we understand it's in columns, don't read the first article into the first column of the second article, but really in the correct order. There's an image. The image in this case has a little bit of a subline that could potentially be used to create an alternative text for that image. And obviously newspapers have these difficult things like article continued on page 3 and all this kind of stuff. So that's something that needs to be re-engineered, and what is used for that in normal cases is a layout recognition engine. So that's a pretty complex software, sometimes artificial intelligence in there, sometimes classical algorithms who understand the model of how a page could look like and then try to find the right order. We have discussed interesting ideas, like when you want to understand whether or not the text is broken in columns and probably a word is split between 2 columns, you can use a dictionary to understand where's the rest of my word. Yeah? Is it down there? Is it up there? To try and find it, identify the columns. You could try and make sense of, with artificial intelligence, make sense of the sentence, like the sentence starts here, where is it continued, what matches, in that sense. But there's other ways to get to layout recognition to understand that. And once we did that, then we can add the structure to the otherwise, back the structure to the otherwise unstructured pages, let's say images, when it comes from scanning, from paper to scanned documents. Yeah. In this sense, the layout recognition engine, as we have them today, I put it down here as an 80-20 rule. That's probably a little underestimated. They do a relatively decent job in understanding the layout. Probably the confidence level or the level of getting it right is higher than that. So in no case we get, and I second what the other speakers said here today, we get to a perfect accessible document without manual interaction. I second that, what everybody said here. But on the other hand, I'm saying accessibility is about being part of it, being able to read that book that is only existing in paper, being able to use that electronic library or not. And with many documents, we can do a tremendously good job in making it accessible. And if we don't accept the little flaws by an automated process here, then there's just no accessibility. That's the alternative, because nobody's going to sit down and re-tag, I don't know, say 7 billion pages of a library or more, right? So that's why I'm saying here, let's give it a chance. Let's try it out, because it's better than nothing, and by far better than nothing, I can say, with layout recognition engine and automated deriving of text structures. Said that before. Scanned documents means having a good OCR in the first place. It's very important to get a good OCR results using dictionaries, understanding the languages, not only on a character, but on a word as well as a sentence level, to understand the meaning, to see, does it make sense, or is there another result, that this might be an 8 or a B in the context, right? So that's what it's all about, to get as accurate OCR results as possible. It will never be like the edited text, like the born digital text, but it can be very good, and especially for our purposes here. Then on the OCR results, again, apply the layout recognition engine that can otherwise as well be applied on born digital content, but here in this particular case, the first more difficult step is OCR first, then layout recognition engine on top of that, and then we get a searchable document that can be quite good. There are strategies around things, as I said, when there is a subline to an image, we can use that as alternative text. When there's just an image, okay, just an image, you can potentially see and use an artificial intelligence and try to understand what is on this image, but that's a very difficult thing on random images to do still today. So as I said, we won't get to 100%. There's examples from what not works, but I want to rather focus on these high amount of percentages of documents, of pages of a book or whatever that actually work. We do work with the Internet Archive, for example. Internet Archive is one of the free online libraries where you can read books. And for quite a while, we work with them and trying to make their books that they scan and hold available online for reading, make these books accessible. And there's always typical problems like the screen readers will read out loud the running title of every page of the books, like you Americans do it. We don't have that in Europe, but you do it. And it reads out the page numbers and so on. And it's again, books. So many pages, so many books. You cannot do that page by page manually. You will never get to a decent amount of digitized part of your library. So what we do there is we just tag them as artifacts. We find them and we understand what is a chapter heading. We tag that properly, and all of a sudden we have an automated way. And these books we ran them by users who are dependent on that using screen readers and stuff. These books are really good. So are they perfect? Not, but they are really good. They get good feedback, and otherwise, there's nothing. Yeah, deriving a meaningful text structure is what it is all about. We cannot just fulfill the checklist criteria, which is, I've seen that, a perfectly accessible document that says, this is a full page scan of a document, right? Yeah. The checker will be like, whoa, that's good. That's a good one. Yeah. Okay, we don't do that. You all know it. Again, making the content really accessible. We heard a lot about that today, but with our automated way, we get a long way. Second step in that is obviously once you did that and you have this extra, let's say when you scan books, and you have this extra, let's say the table of content or any other important part of the book where you want to spend the extra effort, you can still go the automated way as far as it gets and then pick the particular important pieces and touch them up using a tag editor or any other means and bring them to 100%. But I said it so many times, not for every page in that book. It's unrealistic. Yeah, so, but again, automation as much as it goes, and then bumping it up to 100% with manual work. That's definitely also much more cost effective than doing it from the get-go. With that, didn't give me the warning yet, right? Oh, you did. I did ignore you. Okay, yeah, just a quick checklist, best practices. I think color scanning definitely on the list. Why shouldn't we do it any other? MRC-based, MRC is mixed raster content. That's the, this thing that I explained. MRC-based, high compression, searchability into those documents, and that's not only about accessibility, that's about also data mining, big data for old archives. Everybody tries to understand how customers behave and what users are doing, but then there's so many valuable content sitting in paper or old TIFF archives that could be converted for purposes like that. So searchability and OCR is a value in itself. PDFA is a suggestion. Again, it goes nicely along with PDF UA in the same file. Auto tagging for mass conversions, and then accessibility checking and fix-ups for important documents. That could be a list of best practices, and yeah, look for the right tools with the right feature sets, but I'm going to talk about that more in the commercial part of my presentation. With that, thank you very much. Yeah, please. Okay.
We've got time to take a couple questions from the audience.
This one.
I was coming to a colleague who was discussing PDF/A. What if PDF/A embeds the font,
Yeah.
from Word, for example?
Yeah.
And if you put the time roman in there as well as the content.
Yeah.
I can see that as a very good benefit. But when you're scanning text,
Yep.
the font that would be embedded would be an approximation.
No, that's a little different, but that's a good question. Thank you. I'm going to try to repeat that. So the question was about scan to PDF-A, particularly. And in PDF-A, the rule is when you have a font that is used to render the text on the page, the font has to be embedded for the reason that it might change over the years, and the document, when it should render the same over all the years, has to have everything that it takes inside the document in order to be rendered identically over the time. So now talking about scanned documents and OCR, obviously we put text in there. What about the fonts in that end? Because that fonts might be approximated, estimated from what is read there, but it's much easier. The fonts are not at all in a PDF-A file when it comes to so-called hidden text, OCR, because what you see on the screen is basically the skin, the image, right? And the text, the OCR, goes in the so-called hidden text layer. So that's something that you only see when you use our product. For example, you can go to the text layer and then see it, and you see all the little flaws of the OCR in there and stuff like that. In that case, used with a different representative font, but the font is not stored in the document because generally those recognized text is invisible. The only thing that you see is the bounding boxes. So you found a word on a specific position of the page, and then when you highlight the text, then you see a bounding box around that word. That is the only thing, the coordinates that highlight, but you don't see the actual text, and that's why PDF-A in the scanned document hidden text part is the only part where you do not need to or even cannot embed a font for it.
So would you agree therefore that for scanning documents, the value of /A from standpoint of embedding anything is not there? You can still have OCR
Yeah.
without having the /A on
Yeah.
the scanned project.
Yes, you can, of course. You can build any document in standard PDF and still apply all the rules of PDF-A and make it a perfectly archivable document. Same thing applies for scanned document. You don't need to put it in a PDF-A compliant file in order to make it a good archivable file. But if you put it in PDF-A, you can run it through a checker and see that everything is okay. Yeah. So the font embedding is only just really one example of what PDF-A in archiving purposes does better than the regular PDF or the full-featured big PDF.
But for the archival issue,
Yeah.
it's not there. For strictly the archival value.
Yeah. Again. Yeah, again, you can archive any PDF if you do the right things, right? But PDF-A just makes it easier. It's just a easier checked way of easier checkable or automated checkable way of creating it in the right way. So, but the font embedding again is not needed. So font embedding is just not a thing in scanned document world. Okay.
All right, thank you, Carsten.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.